Natarajan sir, you can take it up. We are live.
Good. Yeah. Uh, Hello and good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. And I suppose in the cyberspace, it really doesn't matter whether it is morning or evening. And in fact, that is one of the essentials or characteristics of the phygital world that we are going to be discussing, and which is the theme of this webinar, as well as the broader theme of the conference itself. So I welcome all of you, uh, uh, Professor Suraj Kamuri, Professor Chakrabarti, Professor Ambika Nanda, and Professor Ravi Jain, and all the participants and attendees from other parts of from wherever you are, other parts of the world. I welcome you to this webinar. So this promises to be a very interesting one because the topics that we're going to be discussing are very contemporary and very challenging. So basically, what I'm going to do is, and Tanujit has given me provided me some ground rules, and I'm going to follow them to the letter almost. Um, so the first thing is to, uh, you know, is welcoming all of you, and then I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Ravi Jain, who is going to be delivering the keynote address for this webinar, and he's going to talk about ISDSI global, because he mentioned that just a couple of minutes ago about my role in ISDSI, but then he has also played an equally important role. I mean, like laying the foundation and then taking this forward, and then and then making it a real success. And this is this conference, which is coming up in on December 27th, is actually the 15th or 16th time. I mean, it has happened so many times, and every time it has been a great success that I even lost count of it. But that is so it will be the 15th or 16th edition of the ISDSI Global Conference. And so he's going to talk about the growth of the organization and what it has done to promote the research culture in India, and also helping with faculty development and institution development. And after that, I'm going to be calling upon our panelists, distinguished panelist, Professor Suraj Kamuri, to make a statement. Before that, I will make some general comments and set the theme and set the context for the digital comments on the digital. What is the essence of the digital world? And then I'm going to ask Dr. Kamuri to address the essence of the digital world, in particular from the standpoint of higher education and then business education. And so what does it mean? What are the challenges? And how are the business schools, trying to live, uh, survive and also thrive in this digital world, especially when things have changed quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 years. And I will be asking, and then after his remarks, which will run for about 5 to 10 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes, I'll be asking Professor Chakrabarti, Utpal Chakrabarti, to do the same. But from an industry perspective, what kind of adjustments have been made in the last 2 or 3 years, and short-term adjustments that industry has made, and also what are some of the long-term trends, and what are some of the long-term challenges that he sees in this digital world from the industry point of view, and also he can comment about what it means for curriculum in business schools and in education, and what are the best practices that we can learn in academia from industry. And after that, we'll have Professor Ambika Nanda going into in depth about the conference. What are the sessions, and what is the overall theme of the conference, and then and then the panel discussions, workshops, because we've got so much to offer to all the attendees, academicians, and also one of the important things we always do in the ISDSI global conferences is the opportunity we provide for doctoral students. So the opportunity, he's going to refer to that, and then so I really look forward to this webinar as well as to the conference. So let me first at this point turn things over to Dr. Ravi Jain. I mean, I can go on and keep, you know, describing or pointing out his accomplishments, but I'll be necessarily brief in the interest of time. Dr. Ravi Jain is an institution builder, okay, and he's also an organization builder, and he has left his imprint wherever he has been. With Equai, and then Symbiosis Institute in Hyderabad, and now taken on a new challenge, and he likes to have challenges. By the way, I mean he wants to take the institution, wherever they are to the next level. And his latest challenge is to be the founder member and the founder director, I would say, of the Sparks Global Business School in Greater Noida. So we have got a great group of panelists and participants here. So I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Ravi Jain, and he's going to tell us about ISDSI Global, and then also the overall theme of the conference. So over to you, Ravi.
Thank you so much, Nat, for all those kind words. I only wish I deserve all of them. Such a nice evening to have Professor Pomuri, Professor Utpal, and Ambika here on this day for a panel discussion as a run-up to the conference of ISDSI 2022. It's the 16th edition ever since ISDSI found its ground in India way back in 2007. It has been a long journey, ladies and gentlemen, and the vision has been very clear and simple. When we started in 2007, it was with the affiliation association with the Decision Sciences Institute, Georgia Tech, housed in Georgia Tech, a 50-year-old organization. And we started as an affiliate. And we grew from a small, sedate, I would say, team of 7 people to today, having patrons of above 1,500. And they are the ones who have been making every conference every year a great success. The whole idea behind ISDSI initiative is to promote culture of high quality research in the Indian context. Now, when we started in 2007, the research as a culture in academic institutions, both at administration level or even at faculty level, it was very weak. And we have been at some of the top institutions looking at how do we promote this as a culture instead of having a mandate of publish or perish, where people often resort to some sort of managing things or some sort of a transactional approach to whole research endeavor, which is necessarily required to create new knowledge base. So we created this forum to promote research among Indian and subcontinent academicians by bringing together global talent, senior researchers and professors to come and share their thoughts, have conversations with researchers in India, especially people from tier 2, tier 3 institutions were our target group, because that's where a lot of potential lied. As C.K. Prahalad famously said, wealth lies at the bottom of pyramid, and in academic research, it's not an exception. A lot of wealth in terms of ideas and motivation lie at the tier 2, tier 3 institutions, but they always were wanting for a right platform and a place. And ISDSI, by its vision, we wanted to create that platform. And in 2020, 2019, we thought we are now, we have scaled enough. So to have a registered body in India, and we call it a forum from India for the world. And the vision still remains same. We want to encourage budding professors, budding researchers to come and present their thoughts and ideas, bounce their thoughts with really senior people and global researchers of high caliber, and take their feedback and their guidance, and aim for some partnerships to work under their guidance to come out with not just good publications, but develop the appetite for high quality research. ISDSI since 2007 has been patronized by top of the league institutions in India and patronized by professors and researchers all across the globe with almost 20-25 countries, footprints from 20-25 countries. The conference was hosted by IIMs, IITs, and top private institutions. Like it was hosted by IMT Ghaziabad in 2007, and from there it went to ASCI, then to IIT Mumbai, then to IBS Hyderabad, then IIM, MDI, IMI. Last year it was hosted by IIM Nagpur, where it broke all the records in terms of participation and footprints. More than 20 countries and around 1,500 participants came together despite the pressures of, despite the challenge of COVID. Before that, it was hosted by IIM Raipur. Before that, it was by IIM Sambalpur and so on. So this forum provides a really high quality, I would say, opportunity to, I'm sorry, to come and present your thoughts, take feedback, and develop network. And this time, it is hosted by Jagdish State School of Management with a fantastic team under the able leadership of Dr. Atish Chattopadhyay. And I'm sure this year also, like every year, ISDSI conference is going to see a great success. I invite all of you all, if you have not already submitted your papers or registered yourself for the conference, please do so quickly as we are fast approaching the last date. And you can always become the member of ISDSI by attending this conference. We don't charge anything separate for membership. Thank you so much. With these few words, I turn the table. I hand over to Nat to take the proceedings of the day forward. Thank you so much. Nat, you're on mute.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you, Ravi, for an excellent summary of the growth and evolution of ISDSI and the contributions it is making to research, to scholarship, faculty development, institution development in India and also other parts of the world. So, so that sets the stage for the other items in this webinar, which is basically I'm going to make some general comments about the Phygital world, and then also some of the essence or what the characteristics are, and after that we will hear from our experts on the Phygital world from their own vantage point, and they'll provide their own perspective. Professor Suraj Kamuri and also Professor Utpal Chakrabarti. So Phygital world, the world itself is kind of a combination of physical space or the way we have lived for centuries or for thousands of years, and the digital space, okay, the digital world. So basically, the analogy or the metaphor I would like to use is the world of atoms and electrons. Okay, so atoms represent the physical world, electrons represent the digital world. So electrons have been moving around very fast and furious for the last 25 years or so, connecting us, providing us with information, data, so on and so forth. So let me, without going into the history of how we arrived at where we are today. So let me, in the last 25 years, talk about two landmark developments. Because before that, we had information within organizations, but a lot of this information was specific to the organization. Organizations were sharing information, but they were doing it within their own, four walls, so to speak. And it was what you call, through intranet and such. But things changed quite a bit. Okay, in 1997, when internet became available for commercial use, and then this is actually the 25th year they had the development of HTML language due to Tim Berners-Lee, and from there on, the world was never the same. And another important, so internet basically is a huge platform. It's really a global platform, the first example of its kind in the world that helped us, connect with each other and provide information that we want. And the potential of that platform has been expanded, realized, and gone far beyond what it was in around 1997. Then the other important development, which really made this connectivity happen, and people could share information, interact, uh, all in the digital space, is of course the smartphone. So smartphone really put a lot of computing power in our pockets, and we are seeing the result today. So with the result in the last 15 years or so, there has been a tremendous explosion of data in terms of volume, in terms of variety, in terms of velocity, so much so that it got its own terminology called big data. And basically, it has transformed our lives and created new industry sectors. For example, e-commerce did not exist 20 years ago. Now it's an industry by itself. Now we have got the shared economy, and things like Uber, Ola, Airbnb. Those things would have been possible without, again, internet and all the other work that has gone on. So basically, now we have got more powerful computers. We have got data, a lot more data, and that is why they call it data is the new oil of the 22nd century, and then 21st century, and then we have got also a lot of very powerful algorithms. So the combined effect of all this has been uh, development, that has touched pretty much all these sectors. So in terms of essence, I would summarize the characteristics or the issues we are facing in this digital world. And by the way, I mean, recently, if you look at what has happened, a lot of it is due to COVID. COVID has accelerated some trends, and then at that moment, it felt like the digital world is going to dominate. I mean, especially when COVID, started, the pandemic started. We could not travel, we could not, we were confined to our homes or wherever we lived, and so we had to carry out the transactions of work and interaction all, through Zoom. I mean, Zoom became a household word, uh, in the last 3 years. But looks like, if you look at what has happened, I hesitate to call it post-COVID because COVID is still with us. But in the recent 15 to 12 months, what you're finding is that the physical world is also asserting itself. For example, it's not just a question of only bits, but also so think about what is happening around us today. So where energy security, food security, commodities. So these have again gained salience, and these are again getting our attention. So the physical world is not going to go away. It's not that we are going to concede everything to the digital world. So we have gone to coexist, but we're going to coexist and adapt as circumstances and things change. And again, this is also reflected in the performance of the stock market in the companies. Look at what was happening during COVID. Technology companies looks like they were going to run away with it, but in what is happening in the last several months, you find that energy companies have done much better, and the utilities are doing much better, materials and so on. So it is. So we have to kind of think of it as something that we have to coexist and live with, and also adapt. And the important challenges, in my view, in this are the characteristics of this digital world today, that in which we are all embedded, and some would actually, I would say, are also addicted, is would be the following. Uh, one would be privacy. Professor Kamuri teaches marketing, and then every company is able to track every move of customers, and then they are able to gather data online, offline, and in huge volumes. So the question is, where do you stand with regard to privacy? Because I remember in 1998, Scott McNealy, who was the founder of Sun Microsystems, when he was asked a question about privacy, I'm talking about 1998, he said, privacy is dead, okay? Get over it, okay? You got to live with it. So from there on, things have become, gone only in terms of greater loss of privacy. So where are we? Because a lot of information is being gathered, and then so are we losing our rights? Are we losing control over our own lives, and then ceding that control to algorithms? And then, of course, we've got digital divide, where one of the important things, is accessibility to internet resources and other resources. For example, like financial services, a lot of all these things are being transformed by the digitization. So, and along with that comes some problems like gender bias and so on in terms of access to the digital space. And then there are externalities. For example, platforms, social media. I mean, that's where again another new industry has been started, transformed by digitalization. Um, is Are the externalities. Once you have a platform, people are misusing it. There's all kind of hate speech and there's polarization, and something that we thought, social media is a means for communication, for interaction, which will bring us together, is actually going in the other direction. So there are some externalities, and then people want to only listen to, or people want to interact only with those who already have the same beliefs. So we all have so it is reinforcing our confirmation bias. And of course, security in cyberspace, which is as important as security in the physical space. And again, security in terms of information, data protection and such, and also risks in terms of reputation. I mean, once things go up on the social media, so there is so how do we address the risk to reputational risk? Just as one example of a risk, there are multitude of risks that I don't want to go into the details at this point, but just to give an example. And then I mentioned the powerful combination of computing, explosion in computing power, explosion in data, and also development of very powerful algorithms. So all this is leading to AI. I mean, AI is everywhere, and quite often, it is invisible. But we're also finding out the limitations of AI. I mean, AI has been used or applied mostly in technology companies, in virtual companies, which have got access to all this. They've got resources for 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 computing. They've got computing resources. They've got people. They can develop these algorithms, and they also have access to data. But what about the small business? What about the other organizations? What is the return on investment for them? So these are some issues. Probably Professor Chakrabarty can throw some light on this and provide some insight. And then the whole point is about the digital world is we have got to make the digital world human-centered. So it is not that everything can be dealt with through addressed through AI. So, for example, we want to have some kind of a division of labor. So, where would AI or where would the digital world has its competitive advantage, and where do humans have competitive advantage? There is no point in trying to clone AI into human beings. That in my view is not a good development or the way to allocate our resources. So the way I would like to put it is we have to make some choices between what I call automation, where things can be done only by the digital world or by digital tools, like like processing information or analyzing data and such. And that is where AI tools, machine learning have their own edge. But at the same time, we also have to augment it. So there's automation where we are going to be replacing people with human tasks with digital tools, and also the other side is the complement of it. That is the augmentation. So how do we use AI or digital tools to augment what we do as humans? So that I think is a big challenge and the characteristics of the digital world today. And again, the big thing, the thing that we are all facing is the future of work, because COVID has completely redefined work in terms of its location, modalities, and how we interact with our colleagues and such. So, you know, during COVID, of course, employees were working from home, but now things are returning to, I won't say normal, but away from the COVID-related issues. So, so the point is, the bosses want the people back. Okay, they want them back at work. I remember, like the CEO of Morgan Stanley mentioned last year that if you want to have, we are paying you New York salaries because you live in New York. But if you're going to live in Maine in some rural area and then you want to do the work, then we'll pay you Maine, the wages that are appropriate for that location. So what is the future of work? I mean, there are all kind of models being talked about, but so it's a very exciting time as to how we improve productivity and how we also get people together so they can be source of innovation and ideas, which was what is happening in pre-COVID. So how do we capture that as we go forward? So these are basically, in my view, the essence of the digital world today, and we are going to hear more, particularly in the context of higher education and business schools from Professor Pomuri next. So I call upon Professor Pomuri to share his insights and perspectives on the essence of digital world from the world of business schools and higher education. Professor Pomuri.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Natarajan. So, pleasure to be here. Hello, everybody. And, given the comprehensive background by Professor Natarajan in terms of things which have changed, I'll just focus on a few things because, now we're already up to speed on exactly all the things I'm saying. So what I would like to do is break up what I have to say into probably two elements. The first one is in terms of what has actually changed. I mean, there's a lot of things which are out there. There are new technologies, new terminology, new processes, new behaviors. But in a substantive sense, what has really changed? And I want to talk a little bit about that. And in the second part of my 5 minutes, I will touch upon the implications for business education, specifically in terms of modalities, formats, but more important, curriculum. How do we come up to speed, or where are we right now, and so on. So let me first talk about what I think has really changed. I think the one thing you should keep in mind is that anything we will look at today in terms of changing, and then we get very excited about, we have to put it in the context of our history in terms of how long our businesses, processes, and establishments have been around. And I'm not even talking of the history of the humankind, but more in terms of the modern history. My discipline's marketing, and I can go back and tell you, for example, when telephones first came into marketing, people used to say, "Oh, everything's changed. Marketing is not going to be anything like what we've seen before. Telemarketing is going to destroy advertising. It's going to destroy this," and stuff like that. And then it has made some changes, but then there's continued to be a lot of stability and persistence in things we're doing. And the same thing I've heard people talk about when direct marketing came in, when we could mail catalogs directly to people's homes and addresses. There were a lot of people saying everything's changed and marketing is, unlike anything we've seen before. Direct marketing is going to revolutionize how people process information. Advertising is going to be nothing like what we've seen before, and so on. And we know where that went. I mean, today, we've come to the point where companies I work with are increasingly looking at direct marketing once again very carefully, because they realize your email inbox is cluttered, but your postal inbox is actually quite vacant because everybody's moved to email. So now I'm more likely to get noticed if I actually send you a direct mail. So things come, things go. And one thing we should be very cautious about is every time something changes, jumping up and say that, okay, everything's going to be completely different. And we've seen it even in the COVID time. I mean, when people started purchasing things online and, digital transactions and cashless economy and everybody being on Zoom, whether it is for work or learning, people said everything's going away. Higher education will never be the same again. But 21, 22, and now we're beginning to see things falling into place. and fall 22 looks very, very similar to fall 2018. So people seem to have certain stability in terms of what they're doing. So we don't want to get terribly excited. So having said that, the reason I'm getting it is that for those of us who want to look at, what has the digital world and the transformations, what kind of impact they have for us, we should separate two things: what we see at the superficial or the overt level, and what is fundamentally changed. If any of the principles based on which we behave or do not behave a certain way, if those have changed, then things are very different. So for example, just because somebody is buying something online versus in the store, if they're using the same metric, if they're looking for the exact same definition of value for money, and if they're buying the exact same brand, then all it's done is it's probably reduced the transaction cost for the merchant, but it hasn't really changed anything. But if they're doing it with a fundamentally different mindset about what they're doing, then probably things have changed. So what I think one should do before reacting to the implications of any of the changes is to see whether something in the back end, in the substantive foundational sense, has changed. So in that context, I think what the digital transformation has done to the world, whether it is commerce or higher education, is that it has changed, I think, and this is just my personal opinion, everybody would have a different way of looking at it, but I think it has changed three things in an undeniably substantive fashion. And all the enduring changes we're seeing because of the digitization are because of the changes in these three things. And they've got nothing to do with format, they've got nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with modality, but something fundamentally undergirds any of those things. So the three things, in my opinion, I'll go over each one of them in the order of what I think are important. The first change that has come through is this whole idea of transparency. In the past, before the digital era, one of the advantages we've had in any industry, whether it is higher education or whether it is commerce, is that we could operate within an envelope or a pocket where the members inside it did not necessarily know what was happening in the other pockets. So for example, if I was attending a business school in Delhi, I would probably not necessarily know what was happening in a business school in Tennessee or Massachusetts or New York or anywhere else, because I could not go online and then watch one of the MOOC classes or anything like that. The same thing about commerce. I mean, if I was going to my neighborhood store, I did not necessarily know what the price of the product was 15 streets away from where I live, leave alone a different city. But today online, I can do comparative shopping as to what one merchant is offering for, when was it on sale previously, and so on. And what it has done is, from a managerial perspective, whether we are administrators in higher education or whether we are managers in an e-commerce company, it has now made us accountable to universal standards. So now the transparency, what it's done is that our customers are not simply saying, this is just a relationship between you and me. They're saying this relationship has to look like any other relationship I will admire. And whether we are able to or not able to deliver that is not an option anymore, because people are asking the question. So transparency, I think, is one of the things which has gone up. So we cannot operate assuming our customers or our students don't know beyond what we tell them. I mean, they will know. You can be in a classroom and then you're talking about an example of a company. People are pulling up their laptops and then doing a search for that company. And then they'll tell you, well, this is how their stock market this morning because there was this thing in the news. So a lot of things are changing around that side. The second thing which I think has changed undeniably, because of which we will have to respond in terms of what we do, is speed. That because of digitization, what happens is that the time between start and finish is compressed. And what that necessarily means is that, one is our processes obviously have to be very responsive, but what it also means is that our audiences have become very impatient. When they make the query, they want a response right now. We already know that, if you have about 4 or 5 second lead time for your website to load, people are going to quit. I mean, the bounce rate will be phenomenal. One of these metrics based on which search engines like Google evaluate where to put your website result is based on how quickly it loads. So if you have graphics which are very heavy and the website is likely to load slow, search engines know that people would leave. So why even waste their time with websites like that? So speed in that literal sense. but also even in terms of other things. So whether it is in higher education, for example, when people come in and then take an online exam, they expect to see the score by the time they finish the exam. So when we say we're going to do an entrance exam online, they want to know the score in the next 5 minutes, not after 5 weeks. So a lot has changing. So therefore, our processes have to be reliable and accurate enough that we don't have the leeway to double check and triple check. All the verification has to happen because the results are almost have to be instant. So if you do a breakout room in Zoom, people would like to see the summaries posted before the end of the class session and not necessarily 2 weeks later, and so on. So on the commerce side, higher education side, speed has been another thing. And the third thing, which I think is a profound change because of which we have to change what we're doing, is persistence. In the past, any transaction, any relationship, any information had a finite and fairly limited shelf life. After a few months, that's gone. Nobody remembers it anymore. For example, if you were purchased, let's say, Horlicks today, and you come back 2 months later, and then you want to know what was the price of Horlicks 2 months ago, you don't remember. And the store doesn't have any record. There is no memory of what the transactions were, what did people pay 2 months ago, whether the price has gone up or price has gone down. Whereas today, in the digital sense, that persistence is there, which means all the information is getting archived. The memory is almost infinite, which means that people are going back and checking, saying, when 2 years ago people had a similar transaction, what was their experience? So therefore, the bar against which we are held temporally is not just the immediate sense, in a finite sense, but it's almost now infinite. So whether it is commerce or whether it is higher education, I think the main impact of digitization has been in terms of increasing transparency in ways we've never seen before, increasing speeds in which we've never had to deal with, and increasing persistence in ways we could never imagine. So if we don't respond to these three things, no matter what we do, whether we're running a small enterprise, whether you're the dean of a business school, or whether you're a faculty member delivering a single lecture as a guest speaker, does not matter. You have to remember that today in the digital world, when my audience or my customers are in the digital world, I am accountable for a transparent environment to be deliver things at a very high speed, all the actions and reactions, and knowing fully well that whatever I do will have infinite shelf life. If I say anything 2 months later, people can pull up the record and say, that's what you said 2 months ago. So let me come to the last part of what I will be talking about in terms of, so therefore, what does all this mean for higher education? Have schools of business and universities kept up with curriculum changes or pedagogy or format modality changes in the context of what I just said about digital transformations on these three things? My answer to that, again, my experience of looking at the several schools, is that probably not. And the reason I think a lot of business schools haven't kept up in terms of the appropriate changes in the context of what I just talked about is because we're making the same mistakes as some of the companies have made and which I've referred to. We're looking at the more elementary or superficial on the surface changes, and we think that's what people want. So for example, we say things like, people want online options, so let's launch an online program. But that's a modality issue. But what they're expecting in the online is they're expecting transparency, speed, persistence. So if I deliver the same lecture, instead of in the classroom, instead I do it online, my persistence, transparency, and speed have not changed. So therefore, fundamentally, I've changed nothing. And that's where I think the problem is coming in. So when students, for example, are increasingly getting frustrated saying, I'm not learning some of the new things, or even worse, when companies are now recruit business students are saying, you know what, I just will take the student, spend a few months training them on the skills I want, because the skills they graduate with today are not like the skills they will be required to have 5 years from now. They're raising a specific fundamental question in terms of, are business schools doing something that is about the future, or are they stuck in the past? And I think that's happening because of transparency, speed, and persistence. Now, in order to incorporate these three things, what would need to happen is we need to go back to ground zeros, absolutely the first square, and then take a blank sheet of paper and say that if I have to teach this topic, or if I have to deliver this program in the new world for a new audience, how can that be done? Highlighting transparency, speed, and persistence, we will come up with completely different models. So One example, if we look at schools which are doing this very well anywhere in the world, and I don't want to necessarily pick on any schools to say they're doing well and some schools are not doing well, but you would know for yourself if you look around. So there are some schools who are able to do it, and there are many schools who are not able to do it. And one of the fascinating things which comes up as an administrator when you look at these two categories of schools, the schools which are able to transform themselves because of the digitization, and the schools which are still stuck in the past, the big difference does not appear to be in terms of who the faculty are, does not appear to be in the courses they're teaching, does not appear to be in terms of the infrastructure, the city of the location, alumni, none of those. In fact, it appears to be in terms of how are the faculty evaluated. So in schools, for example, which are stuck in traditional models saying you have to publish 3 in B or 4 in A, and it has to be a Scopus Index journal, or it has to be an ABCD list. What they're basically saying is that your primary preoccupation is going to be on publishing, and the teaching, if you change too much of it, it's going to hurt your ability to publish in the A or B, so therefore I'm going to hold it against you. But the schools which are saying things like, we are going to evaluate you on impact, and the impact does not necessarily come from a journal's reputation, but the impact can come from how many MDPs got interested in your topic and so on, whatever it may be, the broad way. Those are the ones who are doing. So therefore, what seems to be happening is whether we are able to allow faculty members to say that I will take this risk, or are we locking faculty members away from taking the risk because they're too afraid of failing on the conventional metrics? That appears to seem to separate the schools which are responding to this transformation and schools which have not been able to. So I think it comes back to the leadership and the deans and the associate deans who have to have the courage and say, I think for us to be a school for the future, we have to have different metrics based on how we will assemble faculty, how we will deploy them, and how we will evaluate them, and so on. Because our students have changed, our recruiters are asking for different things, but the way we operate seems to have been very same. So it's not so much in terms of the curriculum, but I think it's to do with performance valuation. So if we start tweaking those things, the changes can come together. So that's really the things I want to touch on at the highlight level in my 5 minutes, and I think it's just about time. So I'll hand it back to Professor Natarajan to continue with this discussion.
Thank you for your very insightful comments. And I think you have clearly laid out the difference between what is transitory and what is going to be enduring in terms of change, all brought about by the digital world, and also some of the issues that educational institutions, in particular business schools, have to deal with if they have to navigate in this digital world with the changed expectations of the students. So now let's hear from Professor Utpal Chakrabarty and look at it from the industry side and the perspective he's going to provide on how the employers of our students and how they and also the developments in the industry, what is transitory, what is going to be enduring, what are some of the long-term trends, and what are some of the adjustments. And in fact, his whole company, since for the last 20 years, has been making adjustments from what I saw on their website. So, so please share with us your experience and your wisdom from the industry perspective, Professor Chakrabarty. I don't see him on the screen here.
Actually, Professor Chakravarti has to leave because he has a flight to catch, I think. So, so he just called me up that he's unable to join right now. So I think we'll carry on without him.
Okay, then yeah, let me then ask. Okay, so, ask Professor Ambika to talk about the conference itself and the workshops and what we've got to offer to the attendees and the participants. Professor Ambika?
I think Yeah, Tanujit, I'll need the slides. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Professor Ambika Nanda from JAXOM. I am one of the conference co-chairs. I'm sharing this responsibility with two other esteemed professors, Professor Supriyo and Professor Vitala Rao. Definitely, I'm the least qualified among three of them to take this responsibility. I'll try to do my best on behalf of my chairs. Next slide, please. So this is the table of contents of the conference. If I can put a table of contents for the conference, then there are totally 10 tracks of this conference. And the conference theme is building sustainable businesses in the phygital world. That's the broad theme, and we have 10 tracks in that. These 10 tracks are managed by 15 track chairs from 10 institutes around the world. We have 15 plus sessions, technical sessions that has been dedicated to these tracks. We have been successful to do 6 journal tie-ups. Out of these, 3 are with the special issues. 2 special issue approval we have already received. The 3rd special issue approval is pending with the publisher. So in putting together, we have 6 journal tie-ups. We have 7 panel discussions. Then one feature of the conference is having 5 editors or EICs from 3 different continents, and putting them together, they are representing 11 top international journals. It's the editors panel. There are 6 best paper awards. These best paper awards are given in 2 categories. First category are for doctoral, the research scholars and the doctoral students, and 3 for the faculty. And a very generous prize money for these papers. Only thing is that these are given for the full papers rather than the extended abstracts. So we completed the process of getting the papers on November 30th, 2022. Details of all these tracks and track chair sessions, you can always go to the website jaxom.edu.in and ISDSI 2022 for more details. Next slide, please. So one of the highlights of this conference is the workshops. We have 11 of the workshops which are already confirmed, and we are just getting confirmation for the 12th workshop. So there are 12 workshops. There is going to be 12 workshops in this particular conference, and some of the eminent faculties are taking these workshops, which are in the format of 75 minutes. So I'm not going to read each and every workshop speaker's name here. I'll just pause for maybe 15 seconds and then move on to the next slide. Next, please. Yes. So now coming back to the actual papers which have been submitted. So we have received 220 plus papers as of now. These papers 220 plus, they are spread across different tracks. Out of these 220 plus papers, 74 papers are by the doctoral students and the research scholars. So I must say, going by the theme of the conference, that is building sustainable businesses in the digital world, not so surprisingly, business responsibility and sustainability has got 32 papers. And the tracks like artificial intelligence is having 18 papers. Digital economy, 23 papers. One of the surprising part of this particular event was we had a lot of debate to what to keep it as a future of work, whether we should keep it or not, future of education, future of work. We have got a lot of interesting papers on the flexibility of the work, moonlighting, how work culture is changing, and how the company can adapt to the new digital world. There are 35 papers in the track. If you see, is the highest number of the papers. And the second one is the technology adoption and consumer behavior. So this track has been there for so long in the conferences with different technology adoption models and consumer behavior issues. So we have 35 papers around them. Next slide, please. What next? First thing is that, as I mentioned, 30th November, the submission window is closed. And the last date for the acceptance notification is on 7th of December, maybe a week, less than a week from today. And the conference registration last date is 10th of December. So I will urge you, those of you who have not registered for the conference, please go ahead and start registering for the conference. The conference is going to happen 27th to 29th December. 2022 in our Electronics City campus. And a pertinent question is that where do we stay and how do the transport is getting organized? So there is a specific URL which has been present in the website, which will give you a lot of details. So there are 8 nearby hotels which we have identified. You can book your accommodation. And from these 8 places, we have arranged transportation to the institutes. And all of them are within 2-kilometer radius of the institute. So if you like to have an early morning walk or late night walk, definitely Electronic City is one of the safest places to be in. You can avail that opportunity as well. Next slide, please. So this is going to be a slightly heavy slide, but I will try it very probably simple and trying to get only the essence out of it. This is the day 1 schedule. So the conference registration starts with 9 a.m. in the morning, and we have the parallel tracks from 9:30 to 10:45. It starts with a welcome address by the director, and then we have the conference inauguration, which is scheduled at 11:15 to 12:15. The plenary panel, we call it as being a global scholar. For the first time, we are having 3 global scholars, Dr. Parshuraman, Dr. Vittal Rao, and Dr. Seth, in the same panel to talk about what it takes to become a global scholar. And this panel is moderated by the director or the dean of BITSOM Mumbai, Dr. Ranjan Banerjee. And we have lunch break. The technical sessions go on. I think we have some formatting issues, but this is a workshop. The first workshop is Professor Tuin. Then it moves on to the business school directors panel discussion, that is 4:30 to 5:45. So this has 7 directors of the business schools joining us. Out of them are 3 IIM directors and 4 non-IIM directors so far. We have the workshop going on in the evening, parallel workshops, depending on your interest area, you can attend one of the workshops. Then it moves on to the editors panel, 7:30 to 8:30, and the day ends with live band and a welcome dinner in the garden area of Jackson. Next slide, please. The day 2 of the conference, again, we have the technical sessions in the morning, and in the two levels. At first is at 9:30 to 10:45, then 11 to 12:45. Then again, we have 3 workshops going on with, depending on your interest, you can join in any of these workshops. Then we have a special workshop by Dr. Parshuraman on the programmatic research. It's on the publications. How do you look at publications which are more programmatic rather than opportunistic publishing? So Dr. Parshuraman is going to talk about it from 3 to 4 p.m. We have a panel discussion on accreditation. We have 4 speakers for this particular event, and Dr. Natarajan will be moderating this particular panel. In the evening, we have workshops, again, parallel workshops, and along with that, we have industry panel as well. So there are 2 industry panels which has been identified. I think the first one is a startup panel and second one is the CXO panel. So in case you want to escape from the grill of the academics, you can always attach yourself to one of the industry panels. And we will arrange the transport to the hotel where the gala dinner will be happening. This industry panel as well as the gala dinner will happening in the nearby hotel. So we'll be arranging transport for that. And it will happen 8 p.m. onwards. Day 3. So next slide, please. So day 3, one of the important things is that we want to finish early. That's 2 p.m. Probably the last session is at 2 p.m., 1 to 2 p.m. Session. Being in Bangalore, we expect that you will take about 2 hours or 2.5 hours to reach airport, so that in case you are planning to book a evening flight, still you can comfortably catch it. So the morning we have 2 sessions, the technical sessions, in parallel. 8:30 to 9 is the registration, 9 to 10:15, and 10:30 to 11:45. We have a internalization session where the contextualization will be done by GMAC, and then the the internalization of peaceful discussion is there, where again eminent speakers will be speaking of on the international of peaceful. This particular panel will be moderated by Professor Asit Verma, who is the director of Beam Trichy. And then the session ends with the best paper awards and the validatory function. So this is in nutshell on for the day 3. Next slide, please. So that was my overview. I think how I'm doing in terms of the time, Professor Ramachandran. Do I have time to get into the details of the panel, or we can take it
I think, we may be running out of time here. So I thank you for a very good overview of what the conference has to offer in terms of workshops, in terms of technical sessions, keynote speeches, and also the panel discussions. So academicians, practitioners, research scholars, I think all of them can benefit. So thank you, Ambika, for doing all the work. And I know you and Professor Ghosh have been burning the midnight oil, trying to make this a success. And still, there is some work to be done. But I think it's a great forum for interaction, and I think for learning best practices from industry. And so I think you've got the everything covered from in terms of value that we're providing to the attendees and to the participants. So thank you very much. And of course, I look forward to meeting you in person at the conference. But a lot of things going on to make this an excellent conference. Yeah. Yeah. So in the remaining few minutes, I just want to pose a couple of questions for Professor Kamuri. You have separated, or you're trying to differentiate the some of the long-term or the enduring things that have changed, and changes that are going to endure from the ones that are more superficial, but to which business school administrators or higher education administrators may be reacting. So my point is this: is that how do they kind of redefine their value proposition to the students? And when I say students, I'm not just talking about full-time MBA students, because what has happened in the last couple of years is many leading programs are actually shut down their full-time MBA programs. So how do they factor in the value proposition, the 3 things that you mentioned, the transparency and then speed and then persistence? That's one. The second is also the expectations of students have changed, and administrators always have to make a choice between technology modality, high tech versus using high touch. And during COVID, a lot of transition took place wholesale to high tech, but without thinking through what the implications are. Just putting your lectures online, whatever you do in class, is not going to really add any value to the students. In fact, it may be detrimental to their learning. So the point is, how do you combine the two? The latest thing that one hears a lot about is flex model or the hybrid model. But within hybrid model, there are all kind of choices to be made, where the issue that you mentioned, the important thing you mentioned about faculty evaluation comes in. For example, there are some programs where I think high touch is really important. For example, if they're conducting an executive MBA program, executive MBA, executives are not going to be interested in learning through Zoom or learning through they are there for a different reason. They are there to interact. They want to learn what is new and what they can take back to their companies. So likewise, international students, they are not coming over to US or to UK or going to other countries to watch a screen, and where the professor is, showing some PowerPoint slides. So they want to interact with other students. They want to have the full, educational experience. So the point is, and then also, the speed. You mentioned speed. Clearly, students, these days, employers are looking for specific skill sets, and whether you get those skill sets by going through a full-time program for 2 years, or whether you get those skill sets by taking a module of courses, like over 3 months, they don't care. So the thing is, it has become more challenging in terms of how do you segment your customers and how do you understand the value proposition that has been changed by not only by COVID, but also by the digital transformation, and also the economics of it. Obviously, high touch is expensive, you know, and technology has become cheaper, relatively speaking. So, what is the right balance? What is the golden mean, so to speak? And for example, if I'm comfortable teaching in an executive MBA program, and if I'm comfortable teaching through cases, then obviously my performance evaluation has to be different, and that's a very important thing you mentioned. So, what are your thoughts on how business schools and higher education in general can make these adjustments?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very thoughtful question / comment, because I mean, you make a very important point when you say things like, just by putting our slides online, we haven't changed the modality or anything. Effectively, we've decreased the utility from that thing. And I completely agree with you. I think in terms of the solution, again, I don't have the perfect answer, but just looking at where we could be going wrong. I think one of the things that seems to be out there, which the schools which have not been at the forefront of responding to this have not taken up, is that a lot of things which are structured in terms of how we do, I think, are because of constraints we have imposed on ourselves. For example, build a campus where students live on the campus and the classroom is set up in a certain way where one person is facing many people, kind of a thing. And that kind of imposed a lot of things. And then that extends into even our credit structure. So I think one of the alternatives is to, as you rightly said, that, taking that module kind of a thing. And that makes me think that we can throw those old models away of a structured, credit requirement that you got to do 120 credits in 4 or 5 years and statute of limitations and stuff like that, and say, mix and match, put the things together and, take a module on privacy here, take a module on social responsibility in that other school, take a module on, technology in this school, put them all together, assemble your program. And it doesn't have to be within 2 years or within 3 years. Take 2 or 3, work for 1.5 years, come back, take the modules 4 and 5, and then that adds up to a program. Because as you rightly said, I mean, if companies are increasingly telling us that if you've taken a skill-based module and that's good enough for us to get started, universities have to ask ourselves, that, okay, where do we fit in? I mean, how do we come back? I think is the NEP, which came out, by the government of India, made that almost like a requirement for all schools when they talked about the credit banking. They're pretty much implying the same thing, that the future will be where students can assemble their credits any which way they want in over any time period they want. And the first response of a lot of business schools to that plan is that, okay, then what's going to happen to tuition? Because that means that I don't get the fee for the entire 2 years. I only get it for 6 months, because if they bank the credits and complete it somewhere else, I don't get the tuition. I think that's a wrong question to ask, because that means that our metric has been defined by the old way of doing it. People come in, commit to us for 2 years, and then go, and then we're done. So if we look at it in terms of a more dynamic sense, so assembling modules, I think, is really probably the good medium out there, in my opinion.
Yes, some of the systems and processes have been entrenched. Evaluation systems have been entrenched. But I believe eventually the customer, the students, will win out, and they will be driving the changes. And the business schools who are able to look ahead and be prepared to make those changes are the ones who are going to survive and even thrive. Uh, and the ones who are not going to see it, who are going to, put their head in the sand and say that, we are not going to change. So it's, ultimately it also is as you mentioned, it's an issue of leadership. And can the leaders themselves, first of all, they have to have a good understanding of these issues and be able to drive organizational change so that, they understand the value proposition and what the stakeholders and what the customers are looking for, and also implement those changes quickly. Because and again, I think this is where newcomers have an advantage. I mean, you mentioned that if somebody has a blank slate, so I think they've got an advantage. And Professor Ravi Jain, you are now at a business school where you got the opportunity to have a blue sky approach, and start from scratch. So I think those schools have an advantage over schools which have all kind of legacies in terms of organizational structures, evaluation systems, and also the credit system, and where things are driven by things like tuition and so on, instead of looking at what is in the best interest of the students. Yeah, so I think that so it's going to be a very challenging time, and in the next few years, we will tell who are the ones who are able to adapt and adjust. And I think so. Some of the bigger institutions, established institutions, in my view, are going to be in for a surprise, because there are going to be some very nimble new institutions which are going to, practically eat their lunch. That's my take on it. Yeah. I think so. So, Kanajit, do you have any questions? I saw one comment in the chat saying, "Is it
Yes.
possible to participate online?" And conference, okay, that's offer hybrid mode. Okay, so those are questions regarding the conference. Any questions regarding to the speaker, Professor Kamuri, or to Professor Ambika?
I'd like to answer that
On the
question.
chat?
I'd like to
No,
answer that question.
Kanajit, I think it's been collecting questions. So I just want to know if there are any questions that we can take up now.
So unfortunately, there is no question, no, apart from the one that you've just mentioned, right, from the audience. Right, I think Dr. Nanda can take up this question which has been asked.
Yeah, this is about the whether attendees can participate in the conference in a hybrid mode.
So yes, the participants can join both in the online as well as in-person mode. So we'll strongly recommend to be in the conference in the in-person mode because a lot of workshops and panel discussions and of course the social networking part that cannot happen online. But to give a short answer to your question, yes, many sessions are available online in the conference.
Okay. Yeah. So I kind of regret that Professor Chakrabarti could not be with us to provide the industry viewpoints and what is going on in industry, the trends and such. Both short-term adjustments and long-term, what is going to endure. But my own thing, coming back to this thing about Phygital, is that, digital technology, digital tools, in some ways have also reduced, while they've created new risks like privacy and cybersecurity, they've also reduced some risks. They're trying to build trust. For example, if you look at the model of Airbnb and Uber and Ola, I mean, you are going to step into to the vehicle of a stranger, or you're going to let strangers come and stay in your home and such. So to what extent the people are going to accept the digital tool transformation is all limited by to what extent we are able to police ourselves. The industry is able to police themselves and not wait for regulators. I mean, think about what has happened just 3 or 4 days ago with, or last week with FTX. I mean, this is completely destroyed or collapsed the crypto industry, and it's going to take a long time before people put their investors and customers put their trust in that whole scheme of things involved in crypto. So the same thing is happening with, say, Facebook and social media. I mean, once customers lose trust and risks with reputation and such increase, then that will provide the limit. That will basically be one of the limiting factors of to what extent digital world can dominate us or further enmeshes in the transactions. So it's not just a question of technology advances, algorithms and such, but also how these industries or the people who are using these digital tools and digital platforms and floating them and creating new services also behave. I think it's also a behavioral and a social kind of a thing that will limit the influence that the digital transformation is going to have on our lives. So with those concluding comments or my remarks, I bring this webinar to a close. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your
just a moment,
very
sir.
insightful comments and your participation. And I look forward to, and Ambika again, once again, excellent job, putting all this conference together. I know it's a lot of work. I've been involved in this in the past. So look forward to any continued support you need from us. Please let us know, and we are there to help you. And again, thank you, attendees of this webinar, and I definitely look forward to seeing all of you in person in Bangalore during the conference.
So, sorry to interrupt. Before we end up, there is one question which has been asked by Mr. Basu, which is
Okay.
regarding the accommodation part. I think this is
Yes,
for
yes.
Dr. Nanda.
Amrita, I think I'm sure you can,
Yes.
Yeah, I can take that question. So, I think this is in the website. There is a specific page which mentions about 8 hotels which are nearby to the institute. Out of those 8 hotels, if you see 4 or 5 are on the main road, which is on the slightly on the higher side of the say billing, but 3 are off the road, which are on the lower side of the billing. When I say lower side to higher side, it starts with 1,500 rupees to it goes all the way to 8,000 rupees. And we do not have a special discounts when the hotels were chosen. The entry level 1,500, 2,000 hotels meant for the research scholars and the doctoral students, and we are cognizant that they are under severe, say, the budgetary limitations. So probably they can go for those options. Of course, in the upper side, there is no limit. But to short answer your question, yes, there are 7 to 8 hotels which are identified, which are in the website. But there is no special discounts, unfortunately, to attending this particular conference.
Great. I think that's it. I think we can close the webinar.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you all, and thank you, Tanajit, for the tech support and
Thank you, sir.
and organizing this webinar. Okay, once
Thank you.
again, all of you have a
Thank you,
great day.
Dr. Natarajan, for hosting it.
Bye. Great.